Hey everybody, I'm Nick Williams with Wisconsin Inno. Thanks for joining us for Bytes with the Beat. I'm joined by none other than Wes Schroll. He's the founder and CEO of Fetch Rewards. Wes, thanks for joining us.
Nick, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I'm sure our readers are probably seeing that name pop up more than a few times. Fetch Rewards, this company's raising this company's growing that, this company's Inc. 5000. But for those who don't know and completely understand which Fetch Rewards is, give us a little explainer.
Yeah, so Fetch Rewards, it's a completely free app for anyone in the US to be able to use. It's really simple. All we ask our users to do is take a picture of their receipt, and we will identify if they buy any of our partner products. So we've partnered with almost 500 now at this point brands that are basically always on and will reward you with Fetch points anytime you buy them from any store across the country, whether that's a physical store or an online store. So everyone from Bubbly, who's one of our partners, to across almost every major category, you can find a brand that you can buy that will reward you. And you accumulate these points, all again, Fetch points that you're accumulating, and you can turn them into hundreds of different options, everything from virtual gift cards. You can enter into sweepstakes with them. You can donate them to charity. Really, we don't really care what people choose to use their points for. We just want them to find something that gets them excited, gets them passionate about it. And our brands obviously thank them for making those purchases. And that was the whole goal when I started the business, was to create an easier way for brands of all shapes and sizes to be able to reward the people who are actually choosing to buy their products in a way that's really easy and doesn't make the user have to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Now, this all sounds so sophisticated, but let's go back to where it all began, to young Wes walking around the campus of University of Wisconsin-Madison. After your sophomore year, you come up with this idea and you launched the company. Take us back, was it 7, 8 years ago, when this all transpired, in those first couple of months when you got this off the ground. What were those days like?
Yeah, so the idea actually came up when I had just moved out of my freshman year dorm and into my sophomore year housing. So I was in an apartment. I actually had to go grocery shopping for the first time ever on my own, instead of being in a dorm where I was being fed every meal. And whether it was, going grocery shopping, going to the local convenience store, even flying back home to my home of Massachusetts, no matter what brand I was engaging with, from the food to the clothes that I was wearing to the plane that was taking me back, were asking me to jump through all these hurdles to go and earn their rewards and thank me for my loyalty. And that just seemed so backwards to me. I thought that those brands should be doing the opposite for the consumer, to be able to give them the best experience possible and to truly thank them by meeting them where they want to be at. So that was the whole, thought process, being a brave, I guess, young 19-year-old. There's other words that some people would say for that, I'm sure. I decided, why not go take on this challenge? This seems like something that I wanted to go and pour a lot of my effort and time into. So during my sophomore year, I actually started working early on with a co-founder, Tyler Kennedy, who I met in a business class that I was taking because I was actually in the business school. And we decided to use the Fetch Rewards concept as the company for a business plan competition that was being hosted at UW. So he helped me to write up the plan, to actually create the PowerPoint that we were going to go out there and pitch this idea. And in the last 45 days of my sophomore year, we ended up going not only to the UW competition, but we found other schools that we could enter into competitions in. So we went to University of Massachusetts Amherst, we went to Boston College, we did another one called Perkins Coie. And in 45 days, we came back and we had won about $185,000 in cash and office space. And it was enough to bring it all back to Wisconsin to say, you know what, I'm going to drop out and I'm going to really go after this. So dropped out after my sophomore year, started working with the first early team members that summer, and just kind of went heads down trying to figure out, how do we tackle this problem?
What was the co-working space like? I mean, you're just over 19. I'm sure you're going through a lot of meetings and such. What was that life like to be that young, starting a venture? And then how did your parents take it? I guess another question people are probably wondering.
Yeah, we can start with the parents. I was very fortunate to have parents who were very supportive with this endeavor. I think early on, they always saw that I was attracted to business problems, to trying to create my own business. I had actually done it once before. Even if they rewind back to when I'm probably like 9 or 10, I was out there trying to, wash cars. I collected golf balls because I lived right next to a golf course, and I'd sell those back to the golfers. Great business. So I think they always knew I had this entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I think I remember talking with my dad one time. He's like, yeah, we weren't sure if you were going to make it to sophomore or junior year, but we figured this would happen. So I was super, super fortunate that I was encouraged to pursue this. And it wasn't, that wasn't the hard part of making the decision. The harder part was to step away from being, a 19-year-old kid experiencing college, being fortunate enough to be in that position, and stepping away from that to go work 90, 100, 120 hour work weeks just to try to get something off the ground. I think that was the harder part of it.
I was going to ask, I just want to know what that environment was like. Where were you running Fresh Rewards out of in the earlier days? You said you talked about 100 hours a week. What were those days like?
So early on, we were, UW does a good job with providing resources to entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs. One of those resources was called the Student Business Incubator. So what they provided is, like the business plan competition, you could go and pitch and try to win office space. That would be free office space that you'd be able to utilize. And then they would provide you some of the standard things that you would need for day-to-day operation. And we actually ended up getting in and having our own little office space. So it was right on the campus in a building called the Lucky Building. And we were working out of those offices at first. And that was during the school year. And then after the school year, in one of the business plan competitions, we won office space out in Research Park, which is outside of the campus in Madison. And, it was like I was living downtown and where the student housing was, because I was in one of those apartments. It was about a 20-minute drive, which meant often we didn't have enough time to make the drive, so we'd sleep in the office. The landlord, I think, who was showing us the choices of what we'd get to choose for winning this prize, jokingly showed me this one office that was like 9,000 square feet. And somehow I was able to convince him that we needed that. We were going to grow into it. So we had this massive office that was relatively empty with only like 6 of us working there. So we did the classic startup. We brought in a ping pong table. We had a room with no windows that would be used for sleeping. And then we were going after Pepsi to try to get them on board and be a partner with us. And developers love their caffeine. So I remember the thing that you would see when you first walked into the office was a literal mountain of Mountain Dew. That we had created, and developers could always go and to eat from. And eventually, actually, Pepsi noticed and sent us a bunch more. So they sponsored that a little bit early on. So it was crazy. That was what it was like. We had just a group of people that had this common goal of wanting to do something special, and it was a really fun time. We didn't really know what we were doing, but it was great.
I you hear a lot about founders and the success stories, and we celebrate those success stories, but there are some that fail. You didn't fail, Wes, of course. Sorry, but I'm curious if you had that moment where you were like sitting in a chair somewhere, sitting in your car, and you're like, man, did I make the right choice? Did you ever have that moment, or was it always full steam ahead?
There was never a moment. There was probably hundreds of moments doing that. So I think the scale of magnitude is just is much larger than I think most people would appreciate. I always explain, to entrepreneurs or people who want to think about becoming an entrepreneur, what is like the greatest skill that you see in yourself and in other peers who have successful business. And what I always explain to them is that being an entrepreneur is all about highs and lows. And early on, when you're truly iterating around an idea, you have no idea if there's product market fit. Maybe it's not even built yet. The highs and lows are like hourly. Like you get something to work and everyone feels on top of the world. This thing's going to be $1 billion business. And then the very next hour, all of a sudden the code just freezes and nothing's working anymore. The meeting you just were about to go into, now your product's not working, so you can't demo it. And you just feel like, why am I doing this? So early on, especially for those first 2 years, it was very much that. So tons of highs and lows. And then as the business progresses, I think those, the waves just spread out a little bit more. So, but you get just as high and just as low. And that's why a good entrepreneur, in my opinion, is very good at staying level. early on is when I laugh and say there was hundreds of moments because I was still very young. I would not qualify myself as a good entrepreneur then because I would ride the highs and lows. But that's why my biggest piece of advice I normally give to people is do your best to stay even. You just know that things are never going to be as good as you think they are. They're never going to be as bad as you think they are. Stay level-headed, make good decisions that you think you can with the information you have, and things will go well from there. So I think it's totally natural to feel like you're going to fail. We've come plenty of times close to failing, but internally we have a motto called DTO, defeat the odds. And we always just remind ourselves of that anytime we get to one of those hard situations, which is how are we going to defeat the odds? Failure is just not an option. And once you remove it from being an option, you think much clearer and you can all of a sudden make the right decisions that before seemed very hard to see or blurry.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a key word, Wes, just then, stay. A lot of, you hear about Silicon Valley, and if you want to make it, you have to go out west. You're from Massachusetts, you could have went to Boston and did this. Or you could have went down somewhere else, to Atlanta, to Austin, but you stayed in Wisconsin, stayed in Madison. Talk about that decision and why you want to stay there.
So I think there's a ton of factors that play into it, and they're hard to parse out from one another to truly know which one it was. I think there's a huge amount of pride in doing it in a place that's traditionally referred to as the flyover states. And as I got to know people and see the talent pool, it's such an warranted comment to call it the flyover states. There's amazing people here, amazing talent, and people who are just untapped, wanting to be unleashed to do something amazing. So to be in that community and give people, that light that they could aspire to, all of a sudden we just saw that there was tons and tons of people who would gravitate towards it, versus when you're in Silicon Valley or you're in, on the East Coast, you're competing nonstop against the likes of, truly ones that are going after the stars, the SpaceXs of the world, where, those are going to be really hard to compete with, versus in the Midwest, you can truly still get the best talent, but not have to compete with some of those type of companies. So that was really helpful. I think the other thing, long-term of why we stayed, because that was initially, but why we ended up deciding to stay was because it almost, you don't buy into the huge hype cycles that go on the coast. We were all about know your business, know what your key performance indicators are, and tell the truth to yourself, to your investors about them. You don't have to sell, the moon when you actually have something that is amazing. You can focus on that. So there's tons of, benefits, I think, culturally, to not being in that kind of pressure cooker where it's all about raising the next round and what's your valuation. Here I got to focus on the actual product, on building an amazing company, and not have to worry about kind of that pressure of those things that honestly in the long run don't actually mean anything.
Then you started to get to that growth stage. You guys saw tremendous growth. You're raising funds. I think the Inc. 5000, you guys were the highest ranking company in Wisconsin, the most recent rankings. I think over 3,000% growth in a 3-year period. What do you attribute to that growth over these last 3-4 years?
I mean, first and foremost, it's been the team. I remember in that first office going up to the whiteboard and writing sacrifice, trust, and team. And what we were acknowledging at that point was, hey, we're all making sacrifices. We're here working long hours. We're doing something. But we trust in the process. We trust in, what we're collectively working for being something that's worthwhile. And with those two things, the only outcome you can have is an amazing team that truly rallies around each other. And I think that we just created that culture very early on, and it just drew into the business people who had like-mindedness to want to go and do something that just people hadn't really seen in the Midwest, or especially in Wisconsin. We raised more money than any company in Wisconsin. As you said, we were the top on the Inc. And again, I think it's just because we attracted a group of people that were really excited about that, wanting to do it. And again, the Midwest has that untapped potential of a workforce that is truly capable of all those things. We just gave a reason and a place to come and unleash it. So, team is first and foremost what I attribute it to. The one other thing that I think ties into the last question around the Midwest was, the culture for people who are building it. We're not in this little bubble or echo chamber of trying to build something that we think we want. We know we don't represent all of America. America is a hugely diverse place. that has all kinds of different people who are using our technology. And I think we are very grounded in that. And we always were from day one. I'd be the first one to be on a video conference call or driving around the state to go meet with our users and just ask them about their lives. Why are they using it? We know we fit into your life just as a small part, but how do we understand that? How do we make it a little bit better for you? And I think that culture that the team just adopted was something that also set us apart from anyone else out there, because we were willing to always say, let's not just do what someone's willing to pay us for. Let's do something that we think consumers and our users will actually love. And, that's what we've always been focused on doing. And it's made us some friends and enemies along the way and on the business side, but that's okay. You have to have a biased perspective if you're going to really do something special.
Sorry. Growth.
Popular. They really want to get a hold of you.
I know. Sorry, Wes. 2020, the pandemic year. Every business is impacted. Some grew, some, saw tremendous losses, some closed. But I'm assuming that because of what you guys offer to consumers out there, the retail, the grocery industry, there might have been some growth there. So let us in, West. What was going on last year as people flooded the grocery stores and stocked up on water and toilet paper for some reason? I still don't know why. What happened with Fetch?
As you say, you've never run out of toilet paper if you don't know why. Because trust me, I know exactly why. Look, at the beginning when this was all happening, there was so much going on and such disparate information. It was really hard to make decisions. What we saw actually within the first 2 or 3 months was a major pullback in our revenue, which was a little counterintuitive. But if you think about how we make money when we issue our users points. So we're directly aligned with our users that if we earn them more points, then Fetch makes more money as well, because we just have a markup on top of the points that we're issuing. And what happened in those first couple of months was a complete supply chain shock. So even though, users were going into the store and wanting to find items, they were buying at just such a high rate that the supply chain couldn't fulfill fast enough, which is why you saw stockouts. And the last thing our partners and we wanted to do was contribute to that. We didn't want to go put, great offers out there on Bubbly when you can't even go find it on the shelves. We didn't want to encourage the hoarding. We didn't want to be a part of that. We wanted to make sure that people were getting what they needed. So we pulled back away from that because, again, we didn't want to be driving any of that kind of demand type of behavior. But a couple of months later, and that was a really hard time for us because, again, our revenues just shrunk and kind of disappeared overnight for an extended amount of time. But we're very fortunate that we have investors and a board that just believes in what we're doing. We have great advisors who are counseling us on what was going on, and we decided not to make any layoffs. We didn't do any pay cuts to any of our general population of employees, and we did those things just because we were confident that we could double down and we could focus on getting to the other side of this, because we knew our users were going to need us on the other side when the financial impact started to take a hold. So once the supply chain caught up and now there was plenty of food and things like that, we were able, and our partners just stepped up. They really started to ramp up the amount of points that you could earn back in the system. And all of a sudden our users were the beneficiaries of that, because they were now earning multiple times more than they would have before. And every dollar that they saved helped them to, I remember reading reviews in the midst of this, where it's like, hey, you helped us get dinner for tonight using my Fetch points. Thank you so much. And it's like, that was exactly what we wanted to see happen. And that just really helped us to accelerate in the back half of last year, to add more partners on board who just see the value of being able to reward their users, all the way through to just people were referring other of their friends. And we just had a huge influx of new people onto the platform that we got to serve. So yeah, we were just, we ended up being very fortunate. There was definitely really hard for the first couple of months, but now we're trying to use our fortunate position to be able to really give back and continue to deliver for our users in a way that they've come to expect from us.
I want to ask you, this is a question from one of the watchers, somebody who's tuning in right now, wondering what advice you'd give to Wisconsin startups to expand horizons, but build on Wisconsin success. That's from Laura Kaiser. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the good thing is, one of the silver linings of everything that's been going on right now, and the fact that we're doing this obviously through just a Zoom meeting, is the U.S. and the world has shrunk down to being able to meet with anyone on a level playing field on a box right in front of you. We've had meetings with people from across the world that you would normally have to drop everything, get onto a plane, travel for 24 hours there and back. And, that amount of resources would typically mean only, it made more sense to be on the East or the West Coast because that's where everyone was centralized. You could get more meetings in per day than anyone else. I think a lot of the playing field for entrepreneurs has been leveled, at least for the foreseeable future, because even once vaccines are full, out to a general population, there will still be this culture that these type of meetings are just more acceptable. So I think that's going to be really helpful. And don't be afraid to utilize that. Know that this is a unique time where you can essentially have your voice be heard, even regardless of where you're specifically located. So that'd be one thing I would say, is use that to your advantage when you have the chance to right now. The other thing is this is always advice I give just to young entrepreneurs in general when I've talked with them before, is don't be afraid to network. And be genuine about it. Typically, don't go in telling someone about you because you think you're really interesting and why they should care about you. Take a second to truly understand, what do you think are their pain points? How can you help them? Networking is actually so much more about how can you empathize with whoever you're trying to reach and understand what are the pain points they're probably going through and what can you truly do to solve them, and come at it in an approachable, down to earth way. I think that would be that also really helps Wisconsin to play bigger than just within the state lines, is when you're confident to reach out to people in Chicago or on the coast and just come at it. One thing that I think Wisconsin has going for it is just humility. So I think people really appreciate that. It's different than some of the mentalities on the coast where you will stand out in a positive way for that. So those are some of the things, just, short term, that I think. Otherwise, there's lots of capital that's starting to be infused into the Midwest. So definitely try to go get your fair share of that to help expand faster and think bigger.
Speaking of expansion, Wes, just recently you guys announced you have a new CFO. Big news for the company. So you wonder what's next then. Are you guys positioning yourselves to do some acquisitions? Are you guys gearing up for a successful exit? I'm probably reading too much into it, but what does that mean with that big hire there?
I would say first and foremost, we were just super lucky to have found Nipur and convinced her to come join us. I mean, she is an absolute rock star that we're very fortunate to have. She comes with deep experience, having run private companies and actually taking one public through a SPAC recently. So we love that aspect. When I think of a CFO, what I view it as is a strategic business partner. It's someone who helps myself, our executives, and the entire team to think about all the different opportunities that we have in front of us and to evaluate them with a little bit more rigor. So you listed a bunch of things that could be. I'd say we didn't hire Nipur with any one specific focus. It was more to evaluate tons of them. I think startups in general often die more of indigestion than of starvation. There's just too many things that you can do versus running out of things to do. And I think we're very much in that position where we're fortunate to have tons of opportunities coming to us, and we need a little bit more rigor in how we approach which ones we're going to go after, because we think that, being focused and having that, that discipline to be focused is really important. So that's really what Nipur helps us to do across a number of different things: monitor the right KPIs, ask the right questions when we're considering either partnerships, new lines of business, new expansion internationally, things like that. She and her team are there to help support the business on all of those things.
Do you envision yourself going old and gray and still being the CEO of Fetch, or do you have other things in the pipeline that you want to start? I mean, what are you thinking, Wes?
No, I'm fortunate that every day I wake up, I'm still loving what I'm doing here. I was doing a company town hall this morning, and I ended by saying everyone have a great weekend. It's like, oops. And someone posted as a comment afterwards, apparently Mondays are the new Fridays at Fetch. And I said, look, when you really enjoy everything that you do at work, it's not actually that big of a difference between weekday and weekend for me. I love them both. So no, for the foreseeable future, I mean, I'm so excited by it. Still, there's so much left for us to do. So I don't see myself going anywhere. I'm also not great at having like multiple other distractions. So I'm not working on anything else in the meantime. Like I'm fully devoted to what we're doing right now because the company keeps growing. Our investor, our board keeps allowing us to push the envelope, to try new things, to think bigger, to follow the ambitions that we want. So with all of those being met, there's no reason to go anywhere. It's too much fun doing what we're doing right now. I think we're doing it for a good reason. So I don't know if I'll be old and gray. We'll see. It depends how quickly I turn gray, I guess. But for now, the foreseeable future, just fully excited to be here and just all the opportunity in front of us.
New York, San Francisco, Madison, where else is Fetch located?
It's a good question, actually. So we have about 360 employees right now, and I believe we're across 34 states. So the question is soon becoming, where aren't we? We have fully leaned into remote working. We think that it allows us to find what we found in Madison and the Midwest in general, which is these pockets of just super talented people, regardless of where they live. And we're leaning into that. We'll be a remote first type organization, even when things do start to open back up, because it just gives us access to talent pools that are much larger. We found that we can be still creative. We can still, since everyone was put into a situation at the same time, we were all able to learn through it together. And, we've now been able to create, an enterprise that can onboard people just as well remotely as we could in person. So, we're kind of all over the place right now, but we'll continue to set up hubs. But those are ones that you mentioned are definitely hotspots right now. But we'll see. That'll keep evolving as we keep growing.
Wes, Forbes 30 under 30. I'm sure that was a great accomplishment for you, but seeing Tom Brady win 6 Super Bowls, being a Massachusetts guy, how amazing was that run for you, and how sad were you to see him hoist the Lombardi with another team?
I have to say, I am nothing but happy for him. I was, growing up in Massachusetts at the time when, Tom Brady had first started, and how good the Patriots have been for essentially my whole life. Mm-hmm. He's given me just this unfair view on professional sports of like, you're just supposed to win. Like, I'm confused. Why is everyone complaining about a bad season? I don't really know what that is. A bad season for us was we, lost in the second round of the playoffs versus the first. So it's the Patriots also have a system, which is really impressive, right? They have a great system. And for Tom to be able to go off and do it on his own and prove to everyone he is truly the GOAT, like, you can't be anything but happy for the guy. So no, I'm thrilled for him. Seeing him raise that trophy was amazing. Good for him.
Now, whenever I think of Massachusetts, I think of Boston, I think of accents. I don't hear one from you. Did you lose it being in Wisconsin this whole time? What happened?
I unfortunately never had one. I really wish I did, because I kind of love the Boston accent. If anything, I probably picked up more of a Wisconsin accent from having been there for so long. But yeah, unfortunately, no accent here. Can't deliver.
Last thing, Wes, before I let you go, you've been all across this country. I'm sure you've been international too. But if somebody was visiting Madison for the first time, or just Wisconsin, and they want to get a handle on what's the state's about, where would you tell them to go? And what would you tell them to eat?
Wow, that's a good question. So, I mean, if you're visiting Madison, for me, that's what the state's all about, because that's where I spend so much of my time, although Milwaukee's an awesome city too. But I think a lot of it's about the people. There's just this humility that people carry within Wisconsin, which is really cool. I would say that if I was going to go eat, I would definitely go to Bar Corleone. My buddy Giovanni opened it up. It's over on Atwood. It is the best Italian food. He came over from Italy. He even flew in his oven from Italy. It makes the best pizza, the best Italian, hands down, in Madison is at Bar Corleone. So that would be my recommendation for to go eat.
All right. Well, Wes, we'd like to finish on time here. Appreciate all the insight. And we're looking forward to see what else comes next from Fresh Rewards.
Awesome. Nick, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.